this episode's focusing on beach fishing. So back in the day, that's where I started my fishing, spending a lot of time out on the beaches before I had a boat. These days obviously I fish a lot more off the boat, but I thought I'd go and do an episode on demonstrating on how I rig, the tackle I use, what sorts of things I'm looking for when I go beach fishing. So we'll start first of all with the rod and reel that I use. So to start off with, this rod here I call the Bull. I bought it at a tackle store that's no longer opened anymore, about probably over 20 years ago. All it says on it is a Bull. So it's quite a long rod. It's 3.6 meters in length, two piece, made out of glass. It's a medium action and 6 to 12 kilo line class. So it's a tough rod. I've used it on the beaches for years and it's still going strong. Never had to replace an eyelet or anything like that, and use it on the rocks also. So it's been hammered and it's still, obviously it's got a lot of scars and so on from over the years, but still going strong. I still use it and you'll see some fish caught on it during this episode. The reel, again, this is old. It's probably same sort of vintage, 20 years. It's actually an Akuma reel, a bait runner. It's called the EB80. So in terms of bait runner, I used to do a bit of drew fishing also. You can whack it in and send your live baits out there, and the dewy would take the bait, okay, and it would spin, and then once you engage, you're on. So don't use it so much anymore, but still a good feature to have on these EB80s. I don't think they even make these anymore. They're an Epix reel, just a bit like the rod. When I bought it, I should have probably bought about 10 of these. He had them for 20 bucks in a box, getting rid of them as he was closing down. So this setup I probably wouldn't be able to replace, but great setup. So that's the basic setup that I use. I'm trying to make it real simple, nothing expensive, especially when you're using the sand, fishing off the sand and off the rocks. And you don't want to be banging a $1,000 reel and rod package and be too worried about it. Gets dunked in the sand or gets hit by a few rogue waves and so on. So, and still going strong. Okay, in terms of the rig itself, I try to make things as simple as possible. Okay, so I'll go through in a second how I put it together, but basically I use three things: a tri-swivel, set of gangs, and a pyramid sinker. Alright, and if you can see there, the length of the hooks is a lot longer than the sinker. Okay, so I prefer it that way, about sort of 40 centimeters or so for the sinker on the bottom of the tri-swivel, and then the gang hooks about a meter's length in the middle of the tri-swivel, and then you got the main line attached to the braid. Alright, so I tend to fish with braid. I didn't mention that a bit earlier about on my reel. I run about 20-pound braid for all my fishing. That Akuma EB80 comes with two spools, and sometimes I had mono on one of the spools and braid, but 99% of the time I use the braid. Alright, so as I mentioned, three things that I need. Get set of gangs. That's the swivel there. So it's a tri-swivel, so it's got three looped ends. Alright, and 20-pound line. Right, so I like to put on the bottom loop of this tri-swivel, and again, make it easy. uni knot. You want to do a uni knot, easiest knot ever. People say, oh, it's only for novices, but you know what? It's the easiest knot to tie, and rarely lose a fish because of my knot. More than likely, the leader will snap. Something silly. Alright, so that'll be for my sinker. Alright, so that'll be about 40 centimeters. Then I'll put a loop in the bottom. And why I use a loop knot there is that it's easy to swap the sinker out when you need. So quite often I'll use that big pyramid sinker. I prefer them because they're nice and heavy, good for casting. So you can get some distance if you need, even though sometimes the gutter's right in front of you. But if you've got some wind and you need to cast, it's nice and heavy, and that'll sit in the sand and dig in and hold your bait nice and sturdy in the sand without dragging along with the current or whatever. If you got a lot of winds and someone that's pushing everything. Right, so the next part. So in the middle loop, again, just the uni knot. Alright, so that will be a lot longer than the sinker. Okay, so I'll drop that one there, about 1 meter. Again, simple uni knot. There we go. And that's it. You just have to trim the tag ends. So you've got a lot longer, you can't get it snagged up there. That'll sit in the sand and that'll just waft around in the current, waiting for a tailor or a salmon or a jewie, whatever you're after. Easiest sort of rig, pretty simple and nice and easy to cast also with that heavy weight. Okay, so the top loop then, I tie my main line. The last thing is sometimes if there's flathead or bream or something smaller, we even had trevally in this episode, sometimes I will change that that treble and use a single rather than and maybe use half a pilchard, and I'll do a half hitch on the end on the tail, just to hold it when you're casting so it doesn't fall. These guys are bloody noisy all through my video. When I go to the beach, why I go to the beach, what do I look for? Alright, so to give you a bit of background, I said this early on, that I started my fishing at the beach, and I used to spend hours at the beach, going mornings, afternoons, middle of the day, low tide, high tide, this sort of wind, that sort of wind, this kind of surf, and so on. So it's a bit like if you go 1,000 times and do something 1,000 times, you sort of work out a little bit of a pattern on what works and when I choose to actually go to the beach to fish. And I've narrowed it down to a couple of things. It's never perfect. At the beach can be, all hell breaks loose. As you'll see in this episode, I got some footage catching some tailor and salmon at the beach. But then there are days where you don't even get a bite, but that's fishing. So I've narrowed it down to a couple of things. And the other thing I'll probably mention about beach fishing, I used to do a lot of it. I was, as a younger fellow, when I did have hair, we'd almost go nearly every afternoon down the beach, and I could sort of work out which tide works better, what sort of water conditions work for a certain fish and so on, because you're going all the time. But when, these days you might only go once every 2 weeks, or you go, oh, let's go beach fishing, and you don't catch anything, and you think, well, there's no fish. It's just that I used to go 5 days, for example, in a 7-day period, and there might be 3 days where the fish was biting, and 1 or 2 days where you might get 1 or 2 bites, and if you're lucky, you get the fish, and maybe one day where nothing was happening. So if you turn up on that day, you'd be thinking, what am I doing wrong? What am I, there's no fish there, and then you don't go fishing again at the beach for 6 months. So it's a persistence thing. If you live close to the beach, it's an advantage, or if you're on holidays, take advantage that you go every morning before everyone wakes up and have a go at the beach and see what sort of conditions or changes in the tide each day do to fish. Because I've been to the same spot twice, 2 days in a row, same time, and the one day nothing, and the second day it doesn't stop biting. So you've got to put the time in. Okay, so people probably ask me, what do I prefer when I go to the beach in terms of conditions? When do you go and why do you go those sort of times? Well, my preference is going in the afternoons. There's a couple of reasons for that. In the afternoon, I find it's easy to get down there because I have to travel a fair bit to get there for a morning fish. You want to be there in the dark. You can't see the conditions, you can't see where the gutters are. I live too far away to know, there's been a gutter there the last couple of days. I'm just turning up and then looking for the gutters and the specific area on a beach to fish. So the afternoon is a better time for me, because then I can take a bit of time, have a look at the beach, assess where I think I should fish. Not perfect, but pick out, the different coloured water, or where the gutter is, depending on where the waves are breaking, where I'm most likely, and where I've caught fish in the past, depending on the conditions I've seen. So in the afternoon I can see that. And the other reason is you get a couple of opportunities where I find the fish might bite. So if that high tide's in the afternoon, even sometimes low tide, it's happened, I've turned up, I can't choose when I can go fishing sometimes, and it's the change of tides are low and it's very low. So if you get an afternoon tide at 4 or 5 o'clock and doesn't get dark till say 7, 8 o'clock, there's a chance that the fish might bite just before the change of tide, just after the change of tide. There's another opportunity there. And if they don't, sometimes it could be on dusk or just as it gets dark. So that gives me multiple opportunities to target fish like salmon and tailor and flathead and jewfish and all those sorts of things. So I prefer that afternoon time for that reason. And beach fishing, I find, is quite good in that overcast condition. So in the middle of the day, like the fish we caught on this video, the high tide was 2 o'clock. I couldn't choose what time the tide was going to be. It was the day we were going fishing at the beach. I chose to go. It just so happened, the fish went on the bite probably half an hour before the change of tide, or at the top of the tide. They actually went quiet for about 10 minutes, and I sort of said to my mate that it'd probably go quiet now for about 10 or 15 minutes, and it did, because the whole time we were there, from say 1 o'clock till we left at dark at 7:30, we had bites, except for maybe 15-20 minutes when it was fully high tide. And then as soon as it changed, again they started biting again. So we were on the salmon, tailor, constant bites. Some days it's like that. Some days I'll turn up, it's perfect tide, perfect conditions, perfect gutter. Fish might not be there, fish are not biting, many reasons. So yeah, I prefer that afternoon tide. And also, if I've got to go through the day, that low light conditions where the clouds are sort of taken over, I don't mind. And the other ingredient, if I can get it, you quite often see on a lot of my photos, if I've taken photos at the beach, in the background is dark clouds or some sort of storm or some sort of change. I always find, if I can get there before a change occurring at the beach, a big storm or so on, which can be a bit hairy at times, the fish tend to go on the bite no matter what tide it is. It's almost like they know, okay, I need to go get a feed, and then bad weather's coming. So that's my thoughts. Everyone's got their own thoughts on beach fishing, okay? And as I said earlier on, I spent many hours fishless on the beach. Now I've narrowed it down to a bit of a smaller window where I've got a better percentage rate when I turn up to the beach, especially when I have to drive an hour to get to the beach. That's the worst thing, is turning up and not having a bite. and then leaving late at night, full of sand, cold in the middle of winter, without a bite or a fish. So you had to get, I've got better at limiting those days or nights. All right, so hopefully you enjoy the footage that I've got over the beaches. This one was over at, normally I would fish the northern beaches, but over the time I had fished areas like Terrigal and the Entrance, and Womberall is where I was for this one, just in front of the lagoon, or in Terrigal, if you can recognise it. And I actually went there 2 days over a space of a couple of days, over the long weekend, because a few people were interested in going down again after I caught some fish, and it was quite productive, and hadn't been beach fishing for a long time, so it was a good opportunity to get down there again, rather than being on the boat. Make it simple, that's the key. Don't make it hard. Simple rigs. People will use all sorts of stuff to tie it. It's so easy to retie on the beach. So I make it as simple as possible. And just remember, you know, I'm doing this video, and you might think, oh, I've got to go to the beach and fish. Okay, I made this video a couple of weeks ago, catching the fish. You never know when the fish are biting. Okay, don't wait to go for a report or read it on Facebook or whatever it is. Just head down the beach and write the report yourself. That's the motto. Write the report, don't read about it. What? Ah, look at that. Straight away. Go on, take it. I don't know if he's got it. He might have it. Oh. Nice salmon. Nice salmon. Watch that wave. Where was it going? Oh no, I saw it go. You won't be able to see it. Nice little salmon. Nice little salmon. Still on? Yeah. Still there. Oh, I lost him for a minute. Oh, Jesus. Oh, yeah. The salmon. Beautiful. Another nice big salmon. What more? I don't know if it's very good now. Recording. Oh, you're still there? Yeah, still there.
Huh? Yeah, I think so. Nice one.
Nice little trevally.
That's a nice size too.
Maybe that's what's
At least you're getting variety.
because they're. Oh mate, I got him. This is fighting.
Oh my god! It's just here.
Did you see it?
Yeah.